Hey everyone, welcome to People, Their Passion and Purpose. I'm here today with a friend, um, and very privileged that she wanted to be on our show to share her story. Everyone, this is Amy Fish. She is a writer, and just recently, actually, I'm not a great reader, to be honest, and I just texted her and I said, "Give me a book to read," and I loved it. So now I don't think I'll read a book without asking Amy what book I should read because it's not my forte. That's not my thing. It's your thing, not my thing.
Thank
So,
you, Shar.
yeah.
Thank you.
And Amy has a couple of books under her belt, and most recently is coming out with another one this spring called 1 in 6 million. And wow, I had the opportunity. Thank you very much for sending it to me. And it touched me in so many different ways that I'm excited to really hear about your journey in writing this such a special book. But can you just explain to us first, like how you got into writing? And we'll get to the one in
Sure.
6 million a bit later.
I got into writing because I used to be the ombuds person in a nursing home, in long-term care facility. And I realized through doing that a lot of people don't know how to complain well. So I had the idea that I was going to be a motivational speaker and I was going to go out and I was going to teach people how to be good complainers. Like, this is my mission. And I thought there would be money in this motivational speaking. Like, this was my idea. And one of my friends said to me, the way to get speaking gigs, this is a long time ago, is by having a blog. And I was like,
Hmm.
a blog. I said, but I don't have much to say, which is so funny now because I've written four books since then. And I had a blog for 8 years. And now I write a Substack that comes out every single Monday. But in my head
Right.
at the time, I was like, what will I have to say? And so I started blogging, Complaint Department, and that grew into my first book, The Art of Complaining Effectively. And
Yeah.
that grew into my second book. I wanted fries with that. How to ask for what you want and get what you need. And then last year I published a poetry collection called Honeymoon Sneakers. And now this year I have 1 in 6 million coming out. So it really started because I like to talk, and
Yes.
talking turned into writing. And now I do both.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you would say, like, I have nothing to say, like, you have a lot to say.
I know, it's so funny. It's so
It,
funny
it
looking
is.
back
It
because
is.
I do, and I have a lot to say on every topic. Like, I'm always
Everything.
yammering. So the idea that I was like, what will I write about is so funny to me because I've
Yeah.
written about, at one point I had a recipe column for a magazine. I do book reviews. Like,
Wow.
I have so many varied interests, but at the time I was like, what will I ever talk about? It's
Yeah.
funny.
And so when you just started your writing and your speaking gigs, how did that go for you? What kind of experience was like that? Was that
Oh,
for
I
you?
really liked it. I
Yeah.
really liked
Okay.
it. And I didn't have any formal training
Yeah.
initially. So I
Yeah.
just started doing it. And then I went to a few things happened kind of at the same time. One was I went to a writing conference and I didn't realize, called Hippocamp, and I didn't realize that it was the first year that this conference was taking place. I just
Okay.
Googled it. And and I didn't know exactly what creative nonfiction was. Like, I really didn't know much. I walked in off the street, but I was lucky because I came to a conference in its inception. And so it was a time where everybody was open, everybody was there to build.
Mhm.
And I ended up, I don't want to say building a network because I made really great friends.
Yeah.
And I met my first agent and my critique partner, Lara Lillibridge, that I still work with. We're still each other's first readers to this day. It was about, I think, 8 or 10 years ago, the first
Yeah.
Hippocamp. And I got to interview people, and I do interviews and book reviews for the magazine. Like, that's what helped make me a writer. And I just really, it was from opening my eyes and saying, I want to learn more. I've done a couple of classes at the Quebec Writers Federation, but then I ended up teaching there,
Right.
you
Interesting.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how it went for me. It was sort of a combination of luck and being
Yeah.
open to new possibilities.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. There's sometimes a balance in that for sure. I
Yeah.
always find it interesting how people find their way, or maybe their way finds them. It's like
Yeah.
a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to
And
think it was more merit based, honestly.
hmm
And now I think it's way more luck based.
right. Well, you have to also put yourself in the situation,
Yeah.
right? And so, my experience of having a business, selling my business and finding new things, it's just, I see what's coming at me very organically and authentically, And so I could see how people finding their way, like yourself, like all the other people I talked to on this podcast, it's like you are going to attract what you want and what you need and how you want to fill your life. So
Mhm.
it makes sense that you would end up doing that. Yeah. And you never were a writer before. Like,
No, that's the thing. Most
yeah.
writers have a story where they were like, I always scribbled in journals and I wrote in my high school paper, and that was not me at all.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
definitely a reader. Like I've always been a reader. I was the little girl with a flashlight under my blankets,
Mm,
and I would have a book in my desk at school. I always had a book on me, and I
okay.
always read and read and read.
Wow.
So in that from that point of view, and I still read all the time. So from that point of view, it wasn't such a big leap because I'm really a bookie, a bookish, a
Right.
bookie, a bookish, a
I
book
don't know.
loving
A book
person.
lover, Yeah, a
Yeah,
book
yeah,
lover. A book
yeah, for
lover.
sure.
And so falling into this writing, what were a couple of things that challenges that you had to overcome to let yourself get started
Are you talking about this book or writing in general?
writing in general? We're going to get to
Well,
your
one
book
funny
today.
thing is
Yeah.
that when I did the first writing workshop at the Quebec Writers thing, I had a problem with tenses. Like as basic as that, I would write a piece and not pay attention. One sentence is in the present, one sentence is in the past, one sentence is active. Like I really didn't look at that and I didn't
Yeah.
think about it, and it just spilled out of me the way it spilled out of me, and I had to correct for that.
Right.
And that's funny because it's such an obvious one, but
Yeah.
because I wasn't experienced, I
Yeah.
just didn't know how to do that. One thing that worked in my favor is that I'm very what they call voicey. I have a strong voice on the page. I write the way I talk. And
Yes.
so people who like to listen to
Mm.
my, like we were saying, to my opinions or whatever, they say the feedback I get all the time, I hear your voice. I
Yeah.
hear your voice when I'm reading your work. And one of my friends, a Montreal writer, Julie Matlin, says if we gave her any piece of writing, she would be able to identify if I wrote it. Like she
Yeah.
finds my voice so strong. And
Yeah.
so that
That's
was something that always worked in my favor, even when my technical aspects, like present tense, come on. But
yeah.
even when that was weak, my way of speaking was always strong. So that
Yeah.
helped.
Interesting. And so now, the books that you read that you wrote in the past, the first two books, the poetry book, I wasn't able to receive it, but those were funny, you have a sense of humor. Yeah, right. And now so that had a very different feel to it. Now you're getting into 1 in 6 million and like
Yes.
so, what was that like for you? Let's talk about that journey of maybe changing the style of your writing, getting into something totally new. So, even though you were writing a very different book, very
It
different
was
story.
very difficult. I first met Stanley, who's the subject of 1 in 6 million, in 2019.
Hmm.
I started meeting with him. I interviewed him for probably about 2 years, and I tried to write the book, and Shar, I couldn't get it. I didn't
Yeah,
know how to get my way into the story, and I thought I need help. So I applied to a master's program. I applied to one, like I knew which one I wanted because it was all nonfictioners, and you apply with a project. And I just wrote like I need help. I have the project.
right,
I have the subject, I have everything. I don't know how to turn this mass of clay,
right.
into a sculpture. Like I really was lost. And so I had to start all over again, basically, and learn with my supervisors and my writing group in the master's program. And then, so that was like the first thing. And then when we sold the book and I got an editor, I had an amazing, amazing editor. And my editor helped again break the clay down and almost start from scratch again and help me really structure it into a book.
Wow.
So,
So when I recently heard that you went back to do a master's for this book, I was like, Oh my God. And this was before reading the book, I was like, what? Because I think like masters, I'm like, I'm sitting in front of a desk all day, I'm writing all day, I'm studying all day. I don't have a master's. So I just thought, wow, that is passion, you know? Wow. And then I read the book, and then if when you read it, I think you'll understand more why Amy, you went back to school, because I find that you gave it the story such respect, by really
Thank you.
putting your time and going back to do a master's, and like you say, like, you kept rebuilding the clay until it was ready, you put so much into it. You gave this beautiful story so much respect, and what the attention that it deserved, a story that so many of us can maybe relate to in certain ways, but not in other ways. And like it makes you question, like, what an emotional journey, So yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit, like how it was for you while you were writing this book.
While I was writing the book, what was really important to me was trying to get it to be as much as like of the truth, almost journalistically reporting what happened and
Hmm.
how this mystery was solved. That was
Hmm.
really my key focus. The questions of identity and belonging and family didn't come forward for me until the end. I had to really keep like, let's just get this straight. Was it 1941? Was it 70 kilometers? Was it raining that day? And I had to do so much fact checking. Um, and
Right.
going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, as you could see, because this
Yes.
story really just consumed me.
Yeah.
So that's where I was at with it. And I want to also add that it's true. My first books were funny and they were like thoughts I have about complaining. This was telling someone else's story.
Right.
And that really took um, a craft that I didn't have.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
a,
Yeah. Yeah. Like the experience, like
yeah,
how
exactly.
to put it together. And so, I mean, it must have been so challenging for you.
It was
And
hard.
yeah. And what did you do did you ever think like, I'm not going to do this?
Never, not for
Okay.
one day. I
Okay.
knew I was going to do it. It was just a matter of how are we going to get this into our
Okay.
hands?
Okay.
How? And
Yeah.
look, I was on a race against time too. I mean, Stanley, when I started working with him, he was 85. And
Hmm.
he kept saying, I'm not going to make it. And I kept saying, yes, you will, Stanley. And you know,
Mm.
he passed away just a couple months ago.
I know. I'm
And
so
he
sorry.
wrote the foreword for the book, and that was really important to me.
Yeah.
He never got to hold it in his hands though.
Mm.
And that's like,
I
I'm
know.
emotional about that. I
Yeah.
really wanted that. But a few of his friends have written to me and said, like, the fact that he knew the book was coming, that he knew his legacy would be there, was important enough to him.
Yeah.
So there, I was not going to give up. There was no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, yeah, I'm so sorry for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his family will have it, and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so interesting that you said, yeah, like, no, you just knew you were going to do it. And you are that kind of woman. It is it's a legacy to who you are, like this is you. If once you decide to do something, you're going to do it. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
funny because in the MFA program, um, they less than half of the students actually take their projects and they become books. And I was
Okay.
shocked because that is not me. If I'm
Yeah.
going there with a project, it's going to become a book. And I had so many things against me. Like I had gone in with an agent to help me sell the book, and halfway through, she left the industry, and I had to start all
Mm,
over again.
right,
And
I
I was
remember.
getting, so that was a whole thing. And there were rejections and people ghosted. It wasn't like I mailed the book in and somebody said, oh, okay, thank you. Like it was a slog. It was on and on and on and on, trying until finally I got picked off a slush pile.
Wow. And that's as an entrepreneur, and I know so many entrepreneurs as well, and I'm follow so many entrepreneurs. It's like that, it's a resilience that only comes from your gut, or from
Hmm.
your heart or wherever it is that you feel it,
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of challenges, a lot of
Yeah.
obstacles.
And the reason that I started writing Persistence for Writers, my Substack, is because
Yeah,
it's amazing to me to imagine that the difference between being a published author, like listen to this, and not
yeah,
is sheer willpower. No,
yeah,
the what some people are going to give up and they're never going to be published authors, and some people are just going to keep at it, keep at it, keep at it, keep it until finally a door opens. And that's the difference. It's
yeah,
not talent, it's not skill.
yeah.
It's luck for sure, but it's getting
Hmm.
yourself so that luck can find you. It's setting
Yes.
yourself up.
Yeah.
And that's how I always look at it. Like, I know so many writers that don't submit their work. They don't worry, they're worried about, they like to write, they're nervous about having their work published, or they're afraid of rejection. If you do that, the luck is not going to find you.
Right.
You
I
have to
like
have
that.
your portfolio open so that when people do see you, they can see what you've done. And, there's the masters, there's the interviews, there's this interview. Like, you just have to
Keep going.
keep going, keep going,
Yeah,
keep going.
yeah, yeah. And that's like in anything in life, it's very relatable for anybody in life. And so I just want to go back to, I'm losing my thought. I want to go back to when you said that, you were just focused on getting the story straight. And then at the end, the more emotional part comes out. And that is how the book reads also.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just letting like as I read it, it was like, okay, I'm trying to keep the story straight. I'm trying to
I
remember all
know.
the details you're saying, and I'm not a detail person. I'm like, okay, I'm sure I could just let that go. It'll come up again. Or and there was a lot of Montreal memories and things like that, so you made it very relatable there, and you brought yourself into the story, and then at the end it really gets you. Yeah, it really gets you. So tell me about that a little bit. So, for example, here you are going, going, going with the details, and then boom, and then you're realizing like, oh, oh, this woman didn't know she had family, or, tell me a little bit about that, how that affected you.
Um, when I met Maria on Zoom, it was a really emotional experience for me because I had been writing about her for a while. And then one day Stanley said, we have the Zoom meeting. And I was in my MFA in a residency, which at the time was online. So I had booked a cabin. I was in the woods by myself.
Yeah,
Snow was falling, you
yeah.
know, and this was the day I was going to meet Maria. And all I could think about was I wanted to look bright. And I put on this bright, bright red lipstick. And then we come on and it's Stanley Square, my square, Maria's square, and her translator square. And instantly you see that Maria and I are both wearing the same shade of lipstick. And it just
Yes,
broke the ice right away.
yes, you said that in the book. Yeah,
Yeah.
you shared that
Yeah,
in the book.
it just broke the ice right away. And it was as though our hearts just opened to each other. And we just felt like family in that moment. And I don't have a lot of experience speaking through a translator. So
Right.
I'm cracking a joke, the translator's repeating my joke to Maria, you know, so you're like, is this gonna land, right? And
Right.
and it just really did. And all
Wow.
she kept saying was how grateful she was to Stanley and how grateful she was to have family and how grateful she was to finally confirm her Jewish identity. And
Yeah,
so, speaking with her, she was all in the emotional place. She was not
yeah,
interested in confirming. Like, there are newspaper articles for that.
yeah,
They sent me documents for that. She was not interested in this. She was
yeah,
interested in this, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, that was that experience for me.
yeah, yeah. Beautiful. And so, what is your message with this book? Like, what is it?
My message
Yeah.
with this book is that so many of us throw up our hands and say there's nothing we could do.
Hmm.
And this guy, Stanley Diamond, genealogist in his condo in Côte Saint-Luc, okay, run-of-the-mill guy, going to cardio class at the Y, going to kosher quality to buy his challah on Fridays, just like a guy, like any other guy, said, I'm going to do something about this and I am going to help families reunite. And purely from the goodness of his heart, he brought light into so much of the world. And I find that very motivating. I find it
Yeah.
inspiring. And my message in the book is there are unsung heroes all around us.
Yeah.
And we can be unsung heroes too. And
Yeah.
especially now where things are bleak in the Middle East and things are bleak, I don't know, egg prices and everything you hear is bad news, avian flu, this, that. What are we doing? What are we personally doing to bring
Yeah.
light into the world?
Yeah.
And it can be something obvious, but it can be something subtle, like just sitting quietly on your computer and searching records for people and making sure that the records are searchable,
Yeah.
like they did with Jewish records indexing.
Yeah.
Walking into a room full of paper and saying, huh, this should be searchable. I mean, think about the magnitude of the project. So Stanley's hiring people and recruiting volunteers in Poland, doesn't speak Polish, and getting people to show up and getting them permission to be at the archives and getting the papers and having them retype. And at that time, retyping it on floppy disks and sending the floppy disk to someone who's uploading it. I mean, this is a big project. I think we could all bake a banana bread for a neighbor, you know?
Oh, Amy. Yes. I mean, I was exhausted reading your book because I was just thinking like, how did he do this? And,
That's right.
and then, so that's when I started thinking to myself, well, of course, that's the energy you got when you're writing this book,
Yeah,
How
yeah,
could you let him down,
right. Exactly. How could I let him down? And how could I let all the survivors looking for their families down?
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
also as just a community,
Yeah.
have to be there for each other, especially now.
Yeah.
And I hope that message comes through, but that's my message. My message is persistence all the way and resilience, like we talked about, but
Right.
especially in the context of this hero. And I think of him as, I love documentaries or based on a true story movies. So there's the person that invented windshield wipers and the person that
Yeah.
invented, you know, the Swiffer or whatever. Like put Stanley in that category because he invented searchable records. And so when
Yes.
you see Gwyneth Paltrow and Scarlett Johansson, and there are all these clips circulating about them finding their families. It would not have been possible had Stanley not walked into that room in 1995.
Yeah. He's a hero.
He's my hero.
Yeah. He's a hero. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's a hero. And I love what you say about, bringing light. And I think it's a beautiful message, Amy. And it's a beautiful example of what we can do or what any community going through a hard time can do is bringing light. And it could be baking a banana bread for your neighbor. It could be giving somebody a call.
Yeah,
Um, just
yeah,
listening to somebody and also reaching out for help.
yeah.
I was feeling very emotional when I texted you and I said, wow, your book is touching me. And of course, there's so much going on in the community. And so I was having a difficult time and I reached out to you and you were there to support me, which gave me the the energy to support somebody else,
That's right.
and to help
Yeah,
myself a little bit more so that I
yeah,
could fill my cup. And
yeah.
yeah,
It's a good point, Shar, because you know what? It's vulnerability on both ends. It's vulnerable to ask for help, and
yes,
sometimes it's vulnerable to help. And you don't want to get in a place of like, I don't know if they're going to like my banana bread, and I don't know if they like nuts, and I don't know if they're going to eat it, and I don't know if they prefer muffins. And we get ourselves into such a spin that we do nothing.
yeah,
And I think it's so important to get out of that spin and
yeah,
be a little selfless and
yeah,
do for other people, not for the thank you, not for the post, just
no,
because I want to shine light. I want to make the world a better place. In my corner of the world, I can't control what's happening in Gaza, but I could control what's happening in these walls. So
yeah,
what can I do to be
yeah,
nice, to be kind, to be helpful, to be there for someone? And
yeah,
that's really the message that I want my book, 1 in 6 million, to bring. Because,
okay,
and just to talk about the title for a minute, like the 1 in 6 million for me is partially that we're all, not only Jews, but everybody, humanity, any of us could have been 1 in 6 million. Anybody could have
mm-hmm,
been. So
mm-hmm,
it's partially to show that each one of the 6 million had a whole huge story behind them, but it's partially to show that it was a 1 in 6 million chance that they were going to be able to find who Maria was. But it's also to show there by the grace of God go I, or whatever that expression is. There, but for the grace of God go
I'm
I.
not
Like
sure.
it
Yeah,
could something God and go I. But the point is like that could have been me, it could have been you, could have been
yes,
anybody.
yes, yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Great message. Thank you. And so, how are you feeling now that the book is coming out and you're having your launch?
Ugh,
And how do you
how I'm feeling
feel?
about that. I'm feeling excited.
Yeah.
I'm feeling nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling surprised because I can't believe that it's actually going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling great. I mean, the culmination of 6 years of work, that's all of my undergrad plus one of my masters. I said
Yeah.
to Dave, my husband, the other day, like, that's the amount of time it took me.
Yeah.
2 university degrees to
Yeah.
finish this book. Like when I started it, it was before the pandemic. We did not
Yes.
even know what COVID was. No one had worn a mask.
Yeah.
And now we're all the way on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So it's like another lifetime ago.
It's crazy. Yeah. And so when you think about your writing now, um, you have some funny books of your own thoughts, and that was great. And now you wrote a book for somebody else. I don't know if it's too early to ask you if you have another challenge in mind, or are you thinking about, what has changed in your mind about writing?
Well, right now I'm ghostwriting a business book for someone.
Oh, interesting.
So and I got that job because they wanted to take a very dry topic. It's a finance topic and make it funny.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of in that headspace right now.
cool.
But then I would like to do another historical book or a science book after this. I
Okay.
like writing about things I don't know and going down that rabbit hole. It was so exciting.
Yeah,
It was a surprise to me. I didn't know that I was going to do this because I was used to the lighter kind of advice giving side. But I really like this um, nonfiction side.
yeah.
So I think after
Interesting.
this, probably a science topic, maybe a history topic. As I said to my editor, like now that we learned how to do it, I want to do it again.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
can't just not do it again. I don't think I would write about the Holocaust again. I
Yeah.
think this is it's such a work to be, I'm so proud of it. It's such a work to be proud of. I think I really did it justice, and I'm okay to close the door and find another topic that I could do justice.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you're saying that, because that's a big thing to be able to say, like, I'm proud of what I did, means that you really put your all into it and you're like, yeah, that you can close that story, that book
Yeah.
and open up a new door.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, that must be a really good feeling.
It's a fantastic feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Good.
I mean,
Good.
from a vulnerability standpoint, my concern was always relating to the facts because it's so hard to get at them. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, interviewing people and having them corroborate what Stanley said, even with that, I just was really worried that someone was going to come along and say it wasn't a Tuesday, it was a Wednesday. We didn't go to that bagel store, we went to that one, it wasn't that restaurant. But as I wrote in the introduction of the book, like that's going to happen. And
Yes.
the basic story just stays the same. And
Yes.
so one of Stanley's closest friends who he traveled with in Poland, Michael Richmond from the book, who was there for all this, I sent him an early copy because I just wanted to know if he's going to
Yeah.
have a problem with it. I just wanted to know. And he wrote me a really long and thoughtful email about how much he enjoyed reading it. And he said there were a couple of things that weren't exactly the way he remembered them. But first of all, he defers to Stanley's memory. And second of all, he said, as I addressed, this is going to happen. And the story is the story. So that was my big worry, and I'm trying to ease my shoulders shard down from that worry now.
Okay, I get it. I see that. I hear you. And it's interesting because I learned that from you a while ago. I once did a little workshop with you on writing, and you talked about that, like something about like the perfection of every single detail, and how important it is to get the gist of the idea across, Um, but if there's a little something that might not be exactly what it was, it's okay as long as the idea is there.
Yeah,
But I understand, and especially now, this story is so historical that
that's
yeah,
it.
it's a
It's a
different
different thing. But one thing
thing.
I learned in the masters that really helped me is that if, let's say, I'm interviewing Stanley and he can't tell me enough about, let's say, a particular village,
Yeah.
then then I just go and research that village and I combine the two.
Okay.
So
I see.
that was like a good technique that I learned. So I
Okay.
spent a lot of time. So like for example, there's a Holocaust museum in Israel called Yad Vashem, and
Yes.
I've been to Yad Vashem
Yes.
more than once, but I haven't been in a long time. So I
Mm-hmm.
went on YouTube and watched and did tours and
Yeah.
watched a lot of footage. And so when I wrote about it, I combined the two. I said, this is what
Right.
it was like when I went, and this is what the YouTube channel. And as long as I said straight out,
Yeah.
this is where I got it from,
Yeah.
then it's okay.
Yeah.
I think giving credit to your sources is important, but I think you don't
Yeah.
have to rely exclusively on your own memory.
Right. And let me ask you something. Your trip to Poland
Ugh.
was, yeah. So was that planned? Like, when was that planned? When did you go?
Oh, sure. This is a crazy story. We were supposed to leave 2 days after October 7th.
Oh,
So this was a trip that was planned for October 7th, 2022. Is that right?
no,
2023. October
2023.
7th, 2023.
October
Yeah.
29th, October
October
9th,
9th. Yeah.
2023.
Yeah. And we were all set to leave, and the trip was obviously canceled because of the war. And so I wasn't sure if we were going to end up going. And it was with a group and I couldn't obviously halt. The book was going anyway on its merry way. And then it just turned out the timing was that I had submitted my final manuscript. It was done, done, done. When I was in Poland, there were a few things I wanted to change. I wrote to them from there and said, like, halt, can I change these few things? And they were very gracious and they waited for me.
Right. Because you ended up going when, like not too long ago or
No, I just
within,
went in October, this
right.
October
I see. Okay.
or
I
September,
understand. Yeah. Yeah.
this
And
fall.
did you plan to go to Poland because you were writing the book? Like, was
No, my
there,
husband
okay.
wanted to go.
Okay. Okay.
The correlation though is just that I had never felt ready to go to Poland. I always thought it would be too difficult for me. So two of my kids have been, my sister's been, like I know that people have done the March of the Living or this or that. I never thought that I would be able to. So
Yeah.
it was really not in my head. But
Yeah.
because of the book, I was at a writing conference in Austria a few years ago and I had some free time and I went to Dachau by myself.
Okay.
And going to Dachau and seeing the crematoria and everything, I was the only Jewish person in the tour group. I got the tour group off TripAdvisor, and I was wearing a necklace like that had a chai, and the tour guide kept gesturing to me and saying, "And your people, and your people, and your people." And I thought, no, I'm not going to do this again. If I go back and
Yeah.
see the concentration camps again, I need to be surrounded by my people so that I'm not othered in this place where it's so difficult to be othered.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was really not optimal, but I learned that I have the fortitude to take it. So when it
Mm-hmm.
later came up that some of our friends were going, but our friends through Dave's friends side,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
I was open, I was ready, and
Okay.
I accepted to go.
Okay.
Okay, but I didn't tour the villages, my villages, like
Mm-hmm.
Krosno or whatever from the book.
Right.
I didn't tour them. Um, but I did get to go to the death camp that
Yeah.
figures heavily in the book, and that was one of the highlights for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and just for people listening, we're talking about just, a book about a woman that is left on the side of the road right at the beginning of the Holocaust, and her search for her family. And also, it is also coming at a time when October 7th, 2023 happened, and Jewish people have been all over the world have been very affected by all of this. And so I feel as if, you know, for me personally, like having read this book and everything going on with, October 7th and the hostages and everything going on, it's like it is a very emotional time for all of us. And I feel like it also gives us so much hope. And the book gives us hope and the strength to remember that, like, who we are as a Jewish people, how strong we are as a Jewish people, and how committed we are to be a community and to support each other. And, if anyone's listening to this and needs more information or would like to, message me about it, or it's fine. And because some people that are listening might not know all this history that we're sort of taking for granted that people know, there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff happening in our
Yeah.
communities. So,
Yeah.
and visiting Europe and visiting, Poland and the March of the Living is a trip for young kids, adolescents to go on to learn about their history. And I was a leader on that trip in 2015. And yeah, it's very, it's very, very difficult. And I can understand how you might not have been ready to go. But once you're ready, it's like you're ready, you know?
And you know what, Shar, for your listeners, it's an interesting point because this was also a big change from the first draft to the final book. In the first draft, I left the Jewish references kind of peppered throughout, and I hadn't explained them very well.
Mm,
The people that bought the book, Goose Lane Editions, are in Fredericton. Okay.
right.
They're in New Brunswick. They don't know they have no Jewish contacts. And my
Yeah.
editor too. My editor also lives in Eastern Canada. And so when I talked about something like a challah bread, in the book, I explain what a
Yeah.
challah bread is. So
Yes.
I want your readers to all know you don't need any information about the community to appreciate the story of this baby that was left by the side of the road.
Yeah.
And a couple who couldn't have kids of their own walked by and scooped the baby up and raised her. And they were so careful to protect her identity, and her birth parents were so careful that for 73 years, no one knew she existed.
Yeah.
No
I
birth
mean,
certificate, there was nothing. So
yeah.
when she went back and tried to unravel, what happened to her parents and were they Jewish, she couldn't. And it wasn't until it fell into the hands of a genealogist here in Montreal that the whole thing came apart. But all the Jewish aspects of the story we explain, or I explain in the book in
Yes.
excruciating detail.
Yes.
You don't
Yes.
need to have any kind of understanding of any
No.
background
And you
to
don't have to
to
be
appreciate it.
Jewish, and you don't have to be Jewish to
No, no,
appreciate
for
it.
sure not.
There's a
Because the
different kind of appreciation, but
yeah,
I mean, it's also a story of life. It's a story of someone's life, a very interesting story of someone's life. And, throughout the book, you use the word beshert because that's Stanley's favorite word. And beshert means meant to be. And so there's a lot of meant to be's. Um, and I find Bashert is such a beautiful word. Um, yeah. And sometimes it's not in our hands and it's just meant to be, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Whew. There's so much to talk about in this book, about this book and your writing. And so is there anything else that comes to mind that you would like to, bring up that we haven't brought up yet in the interview about the book, about how you want people to read it?
I think this is a book that does well when you pick it up and you read it. I think because there are so many little stories and sub stories, like you said, trying to keep it straight, you don't need to.
Yeah.
I think you can just kind of picture yourself on a boat and let the story carry you. But
Mm.
I don't think it's a book that lends itself well if to put it down and pick it up and put it down and pick it up. Because in 6 months, you're going to be like, who again? And you'll have to go all the way back to the beginning and start.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my only comment. I think this is a good book for people who like to get invested, who like a good mystery, who like science-fueled discoveries, who like, you know, those kinds of books where you're really caught up.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And believe me, once you get like at the beginning, it's a bit like you're again, like, you're reading all the history and facts and stuff like that. But I'm telling you, like, once first few pages in, and then you don't want to put it down, especially the last quarter. Like
Yeah.
you don't want to put it down. So that's for sure. So. Okay, great. So
Thank
thank
you.
you, Amy. Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank you.
and I think your message is very clear about bringing light and being resilient and persevering and not giving up and supporting each other and being there for each other. Yeah,
Thank you for all the
beautiful.
light you bring in
Yeah, thank
to the world.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll talk soon. Take care. Thank you so much, everybody. There's a lot of details and a lot of things we talked about. Like I said, you can always, put a comment if you need more information or not sure about something. Comment on the Zoom link, or you can message me anywhere. I'm always on on social media. So, and thank you for listening to this episode with Amy Fish on people, their passion, and purpose. Take care, everybody.